Alright, so I came across this. I thought this was pretty interesting because, Nick Wright is really trying to push that the Chicago Bears should be worried. That there should be legitimate concerns, and that Danny said that the Bears needed to nail the draft to be great, and now Danny doesn't even have them on his top 10 for teams who nailed the draft. So therefore, okay, we should be worried about the Bears. It's so interesting to me because I was actually going through the data. I was going through the numbers for some of the offenses and the separation rates for the Chicago Bears because of Ben Johnson was just like it was mind-numbing. It was legitimately like oh my gosh. Like wow. And so, clears throat, that's why I kind of kept talking about how many points were left on the board with the Chicago Bears and this offense. That even if the run game a little bit or the O-line a little bit takes a step back and it's, they're not able to maybe be as full force as they were before. If Caleb Williams just continues to evolve and I know I'm a broken record, but just hits his layups at the bare minimum, the offense stays exactly where it was. At the bare minimum. Because, you'll overcompensate for any of the up for the other backtracked. Let alone if the foundation stays relatively stable, but now Caleb takes that step forward like I keep talking about. It's like I've said this before. The Bears lead the NFL in points per game. I mean, like, the offense just has such insane potential. Insane potential. And then a lot of it will be on their shoulders of Caleb Williams to execute. And that is why Ben Johnson is so much about completion percentage and accuracy. Because he knows that if Caleb, it's not the magical place, but if Caleb can just reliably and consistently deliver the ball accurately, the points are there. It's just there. It's just right there for the taking. And, again, for all intents and purposes, people were talking about this defense and how heavily they relied on the turnovers and this or that. That's both true and false. People will keep talking about how they gave up all these yards and they were, able to benefit from forced turnovers and this or that. First off, turnovers are also stops. Whether you actually get a fumble or an interception, you're also a lot of time you're stopping the play from happening. So even if you force in a game 4 interceptions, in a lot of ways they're also just equivalent to just forcing the other team to punt. It's not when people always think of when you force an interception you get extra possessions. That's not really the case. Mathematically it's actually not the case, because if it was, when you look at total drives LDC they got they had 3 interceptions. Therefore, they got the ball 3 extra times. You just ended the drive. And sometimes you end the drive really early, which would be almost like a 3 and out, or a little bit later, and it's okay, they converted a few first downs and then they couldn't, and then they missed a field goal or they had to punt the ball. So it's just you can't always just kind of do that math. And if we look at, red zone, percentages, they were 58%. They were 21st in the NFL. When you look at the defenses that were really not good, that were truly not good. Washington, Dallas. You're talking about 66%, 67%, Tennessee 65%, the Jets 65%, and then even if we look at other great defenses like the Houston Texans 55%, right? Seattle Seahawks were pretty high, pretty low in a good way. 52%, 51.79%. So it's just we can't just say, oh, if we take away all the turnovers for the Chicago Bears, their defense would have been terrible. And it's yes and no. Did they absolutely benefit from those turnovers? Undeniably. 1000%. If they just have an average number of turnovers, does that mean that everything else collapses and now their points per game goes through the roof and everything else? No, that's not what that means. So this Bears defense can easily improve with some of the moves that they've made, draft, free agency, etc. Can easily improve, and you don't have to repeat all these turnovers at all. Truly at all. I mean, they held the Rams to 20 points. No turnovers. They held the Packers to 16 points, one turnover at the end of the game. I think that was, at that point, overtime. Let me see here. Like part of the problem is when trying to look at some of these numbers is the fact that the Chicago Bears didn't really play a ton of playoff team. If you go through their schedule, Vikings no, Lions no, Cowboys no, Raiders no, Commanders no, Saints no, Ravens no. And I think that was Cooper or, Hunt I think at that time. Cincinnati Bengals no, Giants no, Vikings no, Steelers yes. Kind of a weirdly specific team. Philadelphia Eagles yes. Kind of a weirdly specific team. Packers yes, division rival. Cleveland Browns no, Packers obviously 49ers yes, and that was just an ins that was like one of the most insane games I think any of us have ever witnessed. That offense was just nobody had nobody wanted to stop anyone. Like that was just one of those games that happens occasionally. That game was awesome. And then the Lions no. And so really in a lot of ways some of the more competitive games that you could really kind of be like that can be like kind of barometer games that I always reference unfortunately for the Bears were divisional games. So it was just like you played the Packers, but it was like this is a divisional team. This is a team that you played 3 times. This is a team that you know very well, etc. It's like very specific. Same thing with the Lions. Same thing with the Vikings whether they're playoff teams or not. And when you did go up against another playoff team like the Eagles a hot mess, right? Like we all saw that coming for sure. So it's like kind of a tough frame of reference there. But then you're going up against random teams like the Giants and the Bengals and, backup quarterback Baltimore Ravens. And then again, one of the technically the best barometer games was against the 49ers, but that game just from the jump was just like we're just going to have an explosion of offense no matter everywhere, right? Like just literally everywhere. This game is just clearly had a sense of like, man, we are in and on a good old-fashioned shootout here. And sometimes that's just the identity, the identity of the game. I mean, just look at how the Packers played. You played the Packers 3 times and all 3 games really looked completely different. And I just think that when we look at some of these statistics, it's messy data. It's messy data. Going up against the Detroit Lions earlier on having 52 points dropped on you, right? Having these weird games against the Minnesota Vikings. Again, all 3 games were ridiculous against the Green Bay Packers. And it's like really the biggest game, the game that was the ultimate barometer game was the game you lost in the playoffs against the Los Angeles Rams. Now we can't say it was really cold. So that also kind of is a maybe slightly messy data. And it's like yeah. For sure. I get that. The defense played great. The defense I meant to say this in the herd hierarchy top 10 cause Colin was like, the Rams played perfect that game. I'm like, no, they didn't. The Bears had opportunities to force turnovers and they couldn't take advantage of it. But they still held the Rams 20 points. They held the Rams to 20 points. They played awesome defensively against an insane offense that really lit up the elite Seattle Seahawks defense, but a divisional game for them, a little weird, playoff, right? So like we can always kind of continue that logic forward, but I just think of this Bears team in a lot of ways where at the bare minimum I didn't mean to do that on purpose. But the defense it's sneaky. It doesn't have to be so much on these turnovers and so much of this data that we're using to just be like, oh, well, look how bad this defense is. I think it's largely incomplete. And I think some of the issues or the reliance on certain aspects is overblown. And I think, especially as long as the Lions and the Vikings and and the Packers are legitimate, genuine threats in the division, like I think you're always going to get a little bit messier data with some of this because those games have the ability to just again, get weird quickly. As we saw in essentially every single divisional game. I mean, like listen, it's box office because it's exciting. But I mean, you know, both games against the Minnesota Vikings were just wild. Both games against the Lions, for better for worse, were wild. You know, even when you got blown out, like that was objectively like a pretty crazy game. All three Packers games were certainly insane. And it's just like when games are insane, the data is insane. I mean, that is what is that? 2 4 6, that's 7 games that we could be like, I don't know how do you make sense of that. 7 games alone. You're just like, how do I make sense of any of this? And then you can throw in games where you play the Cleveland Browns and Shedeur Sanders and you know, who else did you randomly play? I don't even remember. The Saints, was it Shaq? Was it Spencer Rattler? Like I don't even remember. It's just like it's just messy and incomplete. So, as long as Caleb Williams takes a step forward, I don't think there's anything to be worried about the Bears. As long as Caleb takes a step forward, Bears will be great. If Caleb stays exactly the same, and we get a little bit of repeat of last year, then yeah. You know, worry is a spectrum. It's like, you know, worried in the sense of like worried that they won't be Super Bowl contenders or worried that they're going to not make the playoffs. It's like, you know, those are two completely different conversations entirely. But I still think that there is just plenty of optimism for the Chicago Bears. And I just think a lot of this stuff is really kind of inflated and then so much of it is still going to come down square on the shoulders of Caleb. Do you take a step forward with Ben Johnson? Yes or no? If the answer is yes, then it's like that meme where the person's like where you go left and he's like really happy or you go right and it's like really dark and cloudy. Like that's literally what it is to me for the Bears. Take that step forward and it's like, oh my gosh. It's like Stairway to Heaven. If not, then it's like you know, kind of have to wait and see. Those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about the Chicago Bears? Are you worried about them? Let it be known. Nick is trying to stir the pot of being worried about the Bears. So if they're when the Bears are great next season and they're winning and having all this success, like I don't want him to be like, oh, I'm Caleb's guy. I never abandoned him. I told you Caleb could be the MVP. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. But let me know your thoughts. I read every single comment. So whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get into some discussions. Let's get into some fights. But ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We're building an amazing community here and absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all generally feel connected to. Something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up as it really does help visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.